America is the greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here. Welcome to our special, The Devil and DEI. We're all caught up on DEI, what that is now, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. The newest iteration as colleges and companies say, oh, we got rid of DEI, and they just replaced it with something called belonging, departments of belonging. Same filth, new name. This was a woke way of seeing the world as oppressed versus the oppressors. This is the Marxist worldview. It's the entirety of their worldview, where everything is a battle between the oppressed people that are oppressed by the oppressors. And it is the job of the oppressors to now take, the like white cisgendered men, basically. It is the job of those people to now take the lowest seat at the table and give the oppressed more power, the historically marginalized. You'll hear them say that. Give those oppressed people more power and also tear down the competent. Example, Zohran Mamdani, his director of appointments, in 2016 it was unearthed, tweeted, "It's important that white people feel defeated." So don't for one second think that this is about just lifting up the marginalized. It's also about tearing down the competent. In 2020, she said, "For so long, power has been in the hands of men and or white people, and it has brought us ruin." Now, in these woke DEI people, they got a lot of power over the last decade or so. And they got a lot of companies, a lot of people to go along with this, whether it was through force or shame or threat of cancellation or violence or a thing called shareholder capitalism, which forced businesses to implement these policies. And the left was unbelievably successful at doing this. This is a chart from Bloomberg where they calculated that 94% of jobs in the S&P 100, 94% of new jobs went to people of color. And all the new jobs went to Asians, black people, and mostly Hispanics. Now, here is the most important question of all of this. This is it. This is the key question that everyone's a little scared to ask. Were these people who were hired, these people of color, were these people of color qualified? Just in the past, they were never given the chance to succeed? But now that they're given this opportunity, they are thriving. They're thriving. Companies are thriving. Businesses are thriving. Oh my God. I can't believe we had all this latent potential in our nation. We overlooked it because we were so racist and we didn't hire these people of color. But now that we have, oh my gosh, things are gangbusters. Or were these people not qualified and never were and still aren't? For instance, just a question. I don't know this one yet because it just happened. But Zohran Mamdani just appointed the new head of the FDNY, the fire department. Is this gay woman the best possible choice in all of New York for the head of the FDNY? It's New York. You could pull from the country. Is she the best person? No one's better. And she's only been overlooked because she's gay. She's going to thrive and everyone's going to thrive. And like, oh, I can't believe we overlooked her all these years. Or is she given the job only because she's gay? Worth noting, she's never been a firefighter. So the question is, can we look back at the DEI era? Let's call it the last 10 years, right? Let's say 2020 or 2015 to 2025. That's pretty good. Can we look back on that era and say, have things gotten better or did things get worse? You can pick your metric, movies, novels, newspapers, academic journals, whatever. Did all those things get better as we hired more people of color, the DEI hires? Or did things get worse? I'll give you an example. One of my favorite DEI stories. This one goes back, actually. This is goes back in the late 60s, early 70s. There were all these accusations that symphonies and orchestras were discriminating against black people. Lots of lawsuits brought by black clarinet players saying, oh, you discriminating. You didn't hire me or any other black people because we're black. So the symphony said, all right, we're going to institute blind auditions. You are literally going to perform behind a curtain We cannot see your skin color. We are only going to listen to the music that you make and judge you only by that. So they did that. And in the end, even more Asians and white people got the jobs with the blind auditions. So the New York Times in 2020 wrote a headline, "To make orchestras more diverse, end blind auditions." So are you with me on that story? People of color said, no, people of color, fine, let's do blind auditions. They did blind auditions. Even fewer people of color, let's end blind auditions and now be actively racist to make sure orchestras are more diverse. Now, the ultimate DEI story of all, I know we've shared this one in greater detail before, so I'll go quick. Dr. Patrick Chavis is a black physician before he was a physician, he was just a black guy, admitted to UC Davis Medical School. This is 1973. And he was admitted under what they called the Special Minority Admissions Program. This was early affirmative action. And a white student sued. He's like, hold on, I'm way more qualified than this guy. That's racist. You can't do that. It went to the Supreme Court. Now, the white guy won, but the black student was allowed to stay in medical school. And he was held up as the affirmative action guy, and like the evidence that affirmative action is awesome because this guy's so amazing. He's an amazing student, the best doctor. This is what affirmative action is for. This guy. Senator Ted Kennedy was all about him. Called him the perfect example of affirmative action. He was held up in news articles and news stories. Like, this is the guy. This is the face of affirmative. Finally, we got black people have the option now to be medical students. Long story short, he became a doctor and he was sued for malpractice 21 times. He botched so many operations, he killed patients, left some in permanent pain. One patient he hid in his home for 2 days after she nearly bled to death at his clinic. All right, so that one didn't turn out great. Okay, now that's an extreme, but put it on the spectrum. Is it more like this, what happens with DEI hires? Or do they turn out to be amazing? Jacob Savage wrote an article in Compact magazine called The Lost Generation. This article got a lot of attention. J.D. Vance praised it. He wrote a tweet. He said, a lot of people think DEI is lame diversity seminars, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, or racial slogans at NFL games. But in reality, this is the vice president. It was a deliberate program of discrimination, primarily against white men. This is an incredible piece that describes the evil of DEI and its consequences. He later says, this is why the Trump administration has so dedicated itself to eradicating racist discrimination. We've eliminated funding for DEI, required government grantees to certify that they're not engaged in DEI, fired a number of DEI employees, and asked the Department of Justice to aggressively prosecute all forms of racial discrimination. For too many Democrat leaders, racial discrimination was bad unless it targeted white men. This was an injustice, plain and simple, and this essay explains why. So the author of this essay, he went to Hollywood to become a TV writer. He says when he moved to LA in 2011, so this is right before like max wokeness, men were 48% of TV writers. By the end of the woke era, 2024, they were just 11%, 48 down to 11. The Atlantic, the magazine, their editorial staff was 53% male, 89% white in 2013. In 2024, 36% male and 66% white. Everything falling. White men fell from 39% of tenure track positions at Harvard to 18%. So the whole article, it's worth reading, called The Lost Generation. More and more detail about how every major cultural institution, every major business, every major media outlet, everyone in Hollywood, everyone in academia, tripping over themselves to hire only people of color for about 10 years, which by definition boxed out an entire generation of white men. He highlights Yale. Since 2018, only 14% of tenure track assistant professors hired at Yale have been American men. That's in the humanities, it's 7%. How about med school? In 2014, white men were 31% of med school students. 31%. By 2025, they were just 20%. That's a 10 percentage point drop in just a decade. This is racism. I am against racism. It's unwise because we should be hiring only on merit. When you incentivize something, you get more of it. And right now in our culture, for the last 10 years, we've been incentivizing being weird or being oppressed. You get more points if you're queer, indigenous, trans, whatever. When really you should only be getting points if you're competent and responsible and reliable and all the other virtues that we want more of in America. Let me take a break here because we have great guests coming up. There's huge practical problems with DEI, life and death problems. It's all based on feelings. We've got great guests that will share some stories coming up throughout the show here. But I just want to end with the solution here. The solution is high standards for everyone. Everyone is capable of meeting a higher standard. Keep the standards high. And if people have trouble meeting those high standards, our goal should be to lift up everyone as much as we can so they can meet the standards, not to lower the standards. For example, lately, last 10 years, still now in California, we eliminate honors classes. There are honors classes and we're getting rid of them to make the kids who aren't in them feel better about themselves. That's not raising the standards for everyone, that's lowering the standards. And we all lose when we play that game. We need higher standards and we need to encourage everyone to meet them all. True merit, that is the American way. More on the devil and DEI coming up next right here on the First TV. Welcome back to our special here, the devil and DEI. I want to go right to someone who's doing something about it on the ground. Andrew Krapuschetz, he's the CEO of Red Balloon. Andrew, how are you, sir?
I'm doing really well. Nice to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. What is Red Balloon?
Yeah, Red Balloon. Red Balloon came from my story. I actually was the CEO of a large tech company, and in 2020, my board decided I was too conservative and Christian for their liking. So I found myself delightfully unemployed, and I thought, well, if this is going to happen to me, it's going to happen to a lot of other Americans who are going to have to make a choice between their job and their values, and I don't think that is right. And so Red Balloon was founded for freedom in the workplace. So we help companies hire values-aligned employees. We help employees find companies that will respect their freedom and allow them to just focus on work and merit and all the good things that made America great in the first place. So that's what Red Balloon's all about. We help everybody from Daily Wire and Steak and Shake to mom and pops who really just want to hire great employees, find those great people.
Oh, that's great. So it's like a job posting board, or what services? How does it work?
Yeah, so we have a job board and you can post jobs. We also have a full cycle recruiting service, so we can help you find the right employee. We can go through the entire interview process for you and just bring you the person that's going to not only be a skill fit, but a culture fit. And then we have a lot of hiring automation software because DEI and AI are actually causing a wreck of the labor market right now. And so we're using a lot of tools and technology and actually using AI to push back against some of the ridiculousness that's happening in the workplace right now. Basically, HR tech is the most liberal industry in the world today, and they love DEI. And so we are bringing tools and technology that is allowing companies to push back against that while still hiring really great people. So we're a technology company that includes a job board, recruiting services, and all the things you need to make sure you get great employees.
It's great. Way to see a problem and do something about it. I've never heard this term before, though. What is HR tech?
Oh, HR tech. So there's a whole lot of different businesses in HR tech. So it ranges from ATSs to HRIS, which is HR Information Systems, payroll services. Basically, if you take HR companies, HR is one of those liberal areas where you find a lot of Karens, unfortunately, and then you bring it with the tech, and the tech bros have traditionally been left-leaning. And if you take HR and tech and you put them together, their child is this horrible industry that is pushing a worldview through their algorithms. And I'll give you a couple examples of this. So Greenhouse is one of the largest ATSs, applicant tracking systems. This is hiring automation software. This is software designed to help companies go through the entire hiring process and make it efficient and effective, right? but have DEI baked into their entire process when it comes to that hiring process. So what that means is they're going to give you diversity nudges along the way. In other words, white males, people like me, are going to be put at the bottom of the list when you are applying for a job, and they're going to decide that a skin deep diversity is what your company needs, whether you want it or not, and they're going to only recommend candidates who fit their social ideology. And so this is basically algorithms being pushed on companies all over the United States today. If you think that Facebook and Google for many years use their algorithms to push their worldview, you're right. HR tech does it even more, and they do it, unfortunately, a little more subversively because you don't even know it's happening. So one of our customers realized that their HR tech company, the software they were using, the software they were buying, was actually looking at the profiles of the candidates that were applying for their jobs and discriminating against them based on their skin color or based on their religious preferences. So all bad stuff. And the goal of Red Balloon is to build $1 billion business that redeems the world of work in the HR tech space.
Great. When someone works at a company, big or small, that embraces this DEI stuff, why is that bad for them? Why is this bad for their soul? Why is it bad for their life?
Yeah, absolutely. So DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, those are actually not bad words. And in fact, if you use them all by themselves, they're fairly Christian or religious words, right? It's okay to actually have diversity of thought, diversity of idea, diversity of opinion within your business. In fact, that's very healthy. But when these words are used as weapons against conservatives, that's where we get the problem. And basically what they say is that you should not be valued in the workplace apart from the parents that you have, apart from your sexual preferences, apart from your background, where we believe, because we're Americans, we're hardworking, we believe you should be valued based on the merit that you bring to the job. So the hard work you do should have a huge impact on your ability to get a promotion, a raise, and be able to succeed at that business. Whereas DEI basically says those things don't matter. What does matter is these immutable characteristics about you. And what it does is it puts everybody in an extremely awkward position. So I'm just going to call it out. If you are black and you get a promotion, if you are a hardworking person who earned that, everyone's like, well, did you get that because you're just matching a DEI quota? Or did you get that because you actually worked hard and you earned it the way that it should work in the workplace? And so it actually discriminates against everybody. It puts everybody looking sideways at each other because fundamentally what DEI is, it's Marxism. Excuse me. DEI is Marxism. It is basically saying, I'm going to tell you about yourself, your coworkers, and the world around you, and we're going to judge you based on immutable characteristics, not based on hard work and achieving something. And when you do that, it basically doesn't allow anyone to trust each other because they don't know that the person actually did the work to get the job.
That's great. And that was one of the original arguments back in the 70s, at the beginning of affirmative action in colleges, that professors made. It's like, this is a really bad idea for the exact reason you just articulated there. And we see the fruit of it now. Still haven't learned our lesson. But now I think we have. But just to go back, and then we'll talk more about the future, how strong in the peak of DEI and how formal was the pressure to conform to DEI for companies?
Yeah, one study said that 84% of hiring managers were told to preference people who were minorities, whether that be female minorities or racial minorities or sexual minorities, whether it's gay or lesbian or LGBTQ, alphabet soup, whatever it is, right? So 84% of hiring managers were told that they need to preference those people in the hiring process. Well, what does that do? That distorts your workplace. It basically is telling the hiring manager, don't hire the best person for the job. Hire the person who matches these demographic categories. And that's very, very dangerous, not only for the people who didn't get the job, but also for the people who did get the job, because they now may be in a job where they're totally over their heads. And I'm not saying that you should say that, white people are better at things or men are better at things or That's not the point. The point is hire the best person for the job, period, not based on these other categories. And when you do that, it's actually a compliment to everyone. We all know this. Like when you're a kid and you're playing a sport, if you are fighting a really hard team, working on a really hard team, and you win the game, that's how you build confidence. That's how you build strength in your team, is to do a hard thing together because you know you've worked hard at it. But if you are just getting the win because of who you are, not because of the hard work you put into it, it's actually demoralizing. It's demoralizing for the workplace and for the individual workers.
That's great. Even little kids realize that. Great job, Johnny. And Johnny's like, not really. I didn't
Really.
do a great job.
Not really.
On that,
I know that you didn't keep score or whatever it is. Like they want to do a hard thing where they could lose and then they win. That's how you build confidence in people.
That's great. We've got about a minute. Tell us a little more about your backstory. You said you were like, how Christian, how conservative were you that got you in trouble at your workplace?
Yeah, and I've actually started and sold. I think I've had 7 successful exits over the years. So I've been blessed to start a bunch of businesses, and I see business as an opportunity to bless people at scale. When I was building my last business, I did not discriminate against hiring. I did not discriminate in customers, and I didn't actually have any complaints from my employees or my customers. But I was an unapologetic conservative Christian, and when new employees came into the business, I said, this is how I'm going to run the business. It's not a prerequisite. It's not a weird thing, but it's an opportunity for you to know what you're getting into. And we had a very healthy culture that was high performing. So we were growing 25% a year on a 40% margin, and everybody was having a really good time. But unfortunately, it was 2020, and they wanted me to start talking about COVID, talking about black squares and BLM and things I just was unwilling to do. And so they said that I was a conservative Christian because I wouldn't do what they told me to do. And okay, it's true.
I know this next venture will be just as successful. Andrew Crappyshits, how can people learn more about Red Balloon?
Yeah, you can go to redballoon.work because we thought that .com sounded too much like communism. So we wanted work, not communism. So redballoon.work. I would encourage you to go there. There's lots of resources. If you're an employer, that's how you're going to get your next great employee. If you're an employee looking for a company that will respect your values, go to redballoon.work. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. I try and put out meaningful content every day about how to get a good job and how to live a great life.
Awesome. Andrew, appreciate your time, man. Well done. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to see that Red Balloon be even more successful. It's great. Perfect. Love people seeing a problem, lived through the problem, came up with a solution. As good as it gets. Redballoon.work. Dr. Joe Rigney next, right here on the First TV. Spread the word. Welcome back to our special, The Devil and DEI, with the great Dr. Joe Rigney. He's a fellow of theology at New St. Andrews College. He's the associate pastor of Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho, and author of the very famous book now, The Sin of Empathy. What's it? Infamous, famous, controversial? How do you like to introduce your book?
It depends on who I'm talking to. It depends on whether they liked it or not, I suppose, right?
I'll call it the must-read, Sin of Empathy.
That's right. The must-read.
Let's start from the beginning. Where did this? We know like the Marxist backgrounds and everything, but give me like the steel man for your average person who's like, oh, DEI, nice, good. I'm kind and loving. What's going on in someone's brain?
Yeah, I suspect that a lot of it, the best case for it would be America has historically discriminated against certain races and ethnicities or genders. And, historically, Jim Crow, blacks were unable to get certain jobs or unable to do certain things, navigate society because of legal and cultural oppression. And so as a kind of remedy for that, kind of post-civil rights movement, Civil Rights Act kind of unleashed, the attempt to kind of like rightwise that. And I think for a lot of people, it's initially sold as level the playing field. We judge people, the MLK's classic. We judge people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And I think everybody was kind of on board with that. But the legal regime unleashed by the civil rights movement basically was just asking for someone to come along and start to put the hand on the scales the other way. And I think for a long time, honestly, from the 90s into the 2000s, there was sort of this subtle agreement that, like, because of that past, racial caste system in America, that white folks will just kind of have to put up with, a little bit of affirmative action or what have you, little hand on the scales as a way of balancing out the past. And then I think what happened over the last 10 to 15 years is that basically the left just turned it up to 11 and decided we're just going to drive this thing as far as it will possibly go. And we've seen that what DEI actually has meant is discrimination against whites, particularly against white men. Like, that's what actually it meant. It meant if you're qualified as a white, you're not going to get the job, because we have to rectify these past wrongs.
It's a good steel, man, that you laid out there. Why is it bad? Maybe we can bring some theology into this too. Like, what's the problem with righting the wrongs of the past?
Yeah. So, because it doesn't actually right the wrongs of the past. It's this sort of like the two wrongs don't make a right principle. It's like, the Chief Justice John Roberts, who I'm not a huge fan of, but in the famous decision, I think, striking down affirmative action, he said the way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. It's like this, really, whoa moment of legal reasoning. But that's actually the truth. If you want to act, otherwise you end up in this racial and ethnic spoil system where it's simply a fight as people kind of identify with different groups, or so I'm gonna play up certain aspects of my identity, whether it's my race or my background or my sexuality or my gender, and I'm gonna use those as levers to get ahead. And when you basically say those are the rules of the game, you're setting up a really nasty rivalry system, which I think we're actually seeing play out right now. I think some of the what's going on with the Somali fraud is downstream from all of this, because the way that sort of thing was able to last for so long is that anybody who said, "Hey, I don't know that this is actually a daycare," was accused of being a racist. And so it was like, well, I don't want to be a racist. But the whole system is set up to privilege certain ethnic groups as a way of rectifying those past wrongs. But what it's in reality, what it's doing is enabling present wrongs, whether fraud or, as Jeremy Carl in his great book, The Unprotected Class. It's the best book on what the DEI regime actually has been. Is about the systematic, discrimination against whites over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
What then, if we don't judge based on skin color or ethnic whatever, what are the virtues that we used to in our society judge on? And what do you think we should therefore get back to? If we're not going to discriminate on X, what do we discriminate and have discernment based on?
Yeah, so the steel man for the right to discriminate is something like, I want people who are a cultural fit for my company, say I'm in my hiring practices. I want to be able to hire people that I think will fit the culture of my company. And what people recognized is that sometimes that meant certain people who might have sort of the basic qualifications weren't a good fit and could be passed over. And I actually think that that's part of just free association. I think this is the right to associate with those you want is kind of a fundamental basic element of human sociality. And yet at the same time, it obviously can be used and weaponized in ways where you systematically box out a particular group of citizens. And I think that's an important thing. I don't think it's wrong, for example, to discriminate and say we're not going to hire from overseas because we want to privilege and benefit our own nation. I think that's a perfectly legitimate thing. But the virtues we should be looking for are things like, well, does this person show up on time? Do they work hard? Are they a cultural fit? And I think that's what a lot of companies are actually looking for is can someone do the job? Is their basic competence? And instead, what the DEI regime enabled was, it doesn't matter if you're competent. It doesn't matter if you're skilled. What matters is the rainbow or the skin color graph that we can put up on our advertising in order to communicate that we're good people. And I think that's a key element of part of what the DEI regime has done is it shifted businesses, education away from competence and excellence toward a kind of signaling of virtue that we are good people because we have X amount of minorities or X amount of women or X amount of, and it was not about, are we doing a good job? It wasn't about excellence any longer. And so I think that what we ought to be, judged on, and what companies ought to be oriented to is, are we putting out a good product or a good service? Are we doing a good job? And for that, then you simply look at, well, who are the people that are going to help me pursue excellence in my work?
What is your advice to the Christian listening today who works someplace or goes to school someplace where they still have this DEI worldview, this DEI mindset, because it's still out there, even if they maybe change the name to belonging or whatever. And they're still maybe scared of being called a racist or whatever, or you're going to lose their job or whatever. Like, what's your advice on how a Christian should navigate this?
Yeah, I think, so I think my advice actually is different than it would have been, say, 5 years ago. 5 years ago, in the height of, peak DEI, peak wokeness, there would be an element of wisely navigated, especially if you're the breadwinner who has to provide for your family. Sometimes you just got to kind of navigate it. I think at this point, given some of the backlash against this sort of thing, it's time to actually stand up and be counted. There is a growing sense among a lot of folks that this is unacceptable, that you don't have to put up with it, and that the cowardice that enabled it over time, a number of people who knew, yeah, it was going on, but I just kept my head down. It's like, it's time for that to go. There is a moment, and at this point, you don't have to be the first. You don't have to be the tip of the spear. You're actually following in the wake of a lot of folks who have had a lot of courage to stand up and say, hey, actually, we are just saying we're not hiring white people. That's what the actual conversation is. And you can just cut right through that. And there's actually, with the Trump administration, I think there actually is legal recourse if you find that your company decides to crack down on you for objecting. There is legal recourse. And so I think now is the moment to kind of tip the scales back towards something more like a meritocracy, where we're actually looking at, we are judging people based on the content of the character or the quality of their work, rather than simply, the melanin content, which is a really stupid way to evaluate human beings.
Last question for you, got about 60 seconds. Where does the sin of empathy? Where does empathy come into this, and how can a Christian proceed with a meritocracy when I should be more empathetic to the people who have been marginalized over all these decades?
Right. Well, I think that's part of how it got in. It was branded as, this is the compassionate thing to do, as a kind of restitution for past wrongs. But the problem is with true biblical restitution, there's always a boundedness and a specificity. So, when the Bible says, if you stole something, you need to return it fivefold. Well, that's a number, and you can actually know when your debt's paid. With the DEI regime, it was an unending obligation of, you always have to you're the one who's going to get kicked, and you just have to learn to take it. You're permanently guilty. And so Christians should have nothing whatsoever to do with that kind of permanent underclass view, that white guilt view, that they're just totally get away from that. And instead think in terms of actual, pursuit of excellence and biblical compassion, which is tethered to reality, not untethered to and often its own, following the whims of popular opinion.
Great. Dr. Joe Rigney, as always, fellow of theology at New St. Andrews College, and go get the book, The Sin of Empathy. Dr. Rigney, great to talk to you, sir. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it, Mike.
And your insight as always. All right, let's come back, tell a little bit about David, how he fits into this. One of my favorite scenes of the Bible was Samuel and Jesse and David and all the brothers. It's great. We'll do that, and then bring in some of the virtues that we need to bring back in America if we want to have a golden age again. We'll do that next right here on the First TV. Spread the word. Welcome back to our special here on the First TV called The Devil and DEI. What's the solution to DEI? Easy. Judging people. Judging people based on behavior. Not the most shallow, ridiculous thing ever, which is skin color or sexual preference. Is ridiculous. Judge people based on behavior. Everything is so upside down and backwards from the left, always, right? That's what they do. That's what Karl did. That's what Karl Marx did. And you hear people on the left, they'll say, they'll take good things and they'll spin it around. All right, so they'll say like, oh, you shouldn't judge people. You shouldn't judge. People who have never read the Bible ever will say, oh, the Bible says don't judge. How ridiculous. Jesus talked about hypocritical judgment, where you condemn someone while ignoring your own sin. All right, that's the Matthew 7, verse 10. Judge not that you be not judged, for with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And the measure you use, it will be measured to you. And that's when Jesus said, do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but you don't notice that the log is in your own? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. But the left doesn't see it that way. What they say is, you Christian, you normal thinking person with wisdom and discernment have to ignore all bad things. That was the first step. First, you have to ignore bad things. And then, as the Bible warned us, woe to those, you have to now celebrate the wicked and the perverse behavior at all times, always. That's what they told us. And then we're like, I don't want to do that actually, that's bad. Oh, who are you to judge? No, of course, I'm a thinking adult. Of course you are called to judge properly. You as a Christian are called to judge with discernment and wisdom. And you are to judge according to God's word. Yes, God is the ultimate judge of people's souls. Whether they go to heaven or hell, you don't judge that. But while here on earth, we are called to use our best judgment in the way, use our best judgment so that we can lead a society, people and a society to the most human flourishing possible. And we should be a society celebrating certain behavior and condemning other behavior. For instance, we shouldn't be shouting our abortions. Okay, this behavior should be condemned. We should not condone lying and cheating and stealing and theft and fraud. I don't care what country you're from. I don't care if you're from Somalia or whatever. We can't condone this stuff. We have to condemn this. And we need to create systems that disincentivize it. One disincentive would be if you do it, you go to jail, for instance. But at the very least, there should be no gain, there should be no advantage, no benefit from sinful behavior. But our society today has flipped it around. We celebrate wickedness and perversion and weakness. That's how it goes. If you incentivize something, you'll get more of it. And if you create these systems that allow this sinful behavior to go on, you'll get more of it. Elon Musk the other day shared a video. This was in response to the Somali fraud that was going on. And he shared a video of a woman from Brazil who said in Brazil, they have something they call the Brazilian way. And that says if you want to get anything done, you have to be corrupt. You have to engage in corruption. You have to pay people off. And it's created this culture of always finding the shortcut, right? Never doing it the right way, never doing hard work, you always got to find the shortcut, who to pay off, all that stuff, right? They call it the Brazilian way. We don't want that to be the American way. The American way has always been hard work and excellence. The American way, I'll give you an example. The American way is what makes it possible for us to engage in a perfect military operation to get Maduro in the middle of the night, in the middle of the capital of Venezuela with 0 American casualties. That's insane. That's excellence. There's no DEI on Delta Force. We need to incentivize virtue. Actually, let me go more on that Delta Force analogy. What if everything operated like Delta Force? Who's the best? There's no one looks at Delta Force, like the Navy SEALs, right? No one looks at Navy SEALs like, I don't know, we need more whatever. We're not enough gay people here, not enough of this, not enough of that. No, it doesn't matter. Just want the best. Who's the best? Period. And how do you get that? How do you get the best in Delta Force? Well, you have these incentive systems. You have a system where you rise the ranks and you go in these different directions and you excel based on your merit, based on virtue. Can you pass these courses? Right? Are you an excellent leader? Here's the virtues that we believe in that you must show, that have, in order to make it to the next round of this and that, right? That we created this system in Delta Force to get the best of the best, where we have these guys who can even do that. Why don't we have that in every other system in America? We used to. We used to incentivize virtue. It used to be our ethos, everything we did. John Adams said public virtue cannot exist in a nation without private virtue. And public virtue is the only foundation of republics. You know, we can have a country unless we were people of virtue. What virtues? We got to run. We don't have too much time left. We should do a whole series. Maybe I'll do this on my podcast. Politics by Faith is my podcast. We should do a day on each one of these virtues. So Aristotle had 11, and each had a deficit and then too much of these virtues. You got to try to find the golden mean. But his 11 virtues were courage, temperance, liberality, magnificence, that's a fun one, magnanimity, ambition, proper ambition, truthfulness, wittiness, friendliness, modesty, and righteous indignation. It's a good starting list, right? Aristotle, we'll start with that. But everything we do in our society needs to be to encourage these things. And the way to encourage these things, one of them is to hire based on who has the most of these things. Who has the most of these virtues? These people. Great. We need to have this ongoing culture of competition of who can best demonstrate these virtues every single day in their family and their friendships and at their work. And this is how we judge people, should be judging people. And yeah, some people won't get that promotion. Some people won't get the advancement. Some people won't get all the rewards of a society that promotes based off of virtue. What happened was all those people who didn't excel, they got together and they rewrote the game. So led by Karl Marx, who was a total degenerate loser. Karl Marx was a total wicked, vengeful, greedy son of a you-know-what. This guy was wicked in every way. He hated everyone. He was lazy. He was a drunk. He was an awful person. No one knew him he wasn't famous when he was alive. He just would wait for his family members to die so he could get an inheritance from them. He was like a terrible person. Cheated on his wife. Denied the kid that was born from his maid that he cheated. It's like a terrible, awful person in every way. He would just go around destroying things that he was a part of, organization. And of course he would come up with a system that would reward vice. Of course Karl would do that. And people like Karl are attracted to Karl's worldview. And those people got a lot of power and they rewrote the game. And now we have whole systems that reward vice. And it's not going to end well. Luckily, we stopped it before it got too entrenched. Part of the golden era is getting back to rewarding virtue. I'll share one biblical story here. When God picked David, he didn't look the part. David didn't. He was the youngest son. He was a shepherd. His dad Jesse didn't even call him downstairs when Samuel came by to announce the next king. 1 Samuel 16, Eliab was the oldest brother. And Samuel saw him. Right? Samuel saw him and said, "Oh, surely this is the guy. This is the king. No doubt. Look at this guy." It's all because of how he looked. But 1 Samuel 16:7 says, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him," the older brother. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. God chose David because of his heart. This is how we need to judge people as well. This is a major part of the American golden era. I have a podcast called Politics by Faith. We take the news of the day, run it through a biblical filter, make a biblical point, like we just did right there, pretty much every day over my podcast, Politics by Faith, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Please join us over there whenever you can. Politics by Faith. Mike Slater, The First TV. Spread the word.